So, welcome to the second half of Teaching Languages Online. Most of you know me, but my name is Thor Sawin. Before I got my PhD in linguistics, I did my master's in linguistics and TESOL at Michigan State University, and then I taught for 6 years overseas in Lithuania, Korea, and China. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experiences with online teaching very briefly, some of my philosophies as I approach online language teaching in particular, and then just to issue just a general welcome to the second half of our course. So my experiences with online teaching, I helped design an online MA TESOL program, which wasn't a language teaching context per se, but that was way back in 2006, sort of at the beginning of online teaching and what it could be. It was kind of my first deep dive into thinking about the advantages and disadvantages of learning online, and that program was submitted to the Lithuanian government. It was successful, and that program has been running for quite a long time already, and has continued to evolve. More of my online language teaching experience has been in the German language. So you'll have to forgive me if I use some examples from German. I'll always explain what I'm doing. But I taught an adjunct course at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And during a strike, that was my first time having to teach online. So I had to do a week of our class online while everyone at the campus was on strike. And that was before the pandemic. That was really rocky. The tools were all really new to most of our students. And that was kind of where I discovered that language teaching online is a pretty different beast than teaching content online. I've been teaching content in the MIS context online in the spring, and again this fall. Most of you have had me as in the language analysis course, either this fall or last year in person. But language teaching online I found to be very, very different. This summer I taught intensively, super intensively, in the online Middlebury language schools in the Middlebury German school, and I taught the absolute beginners with the added twist that we weren't allowed to use any English. So I was teaching absolute beginners online with no L1 use at all, only target language use, which not only affected how we used tools, but also which tools we could use, how I put them together. Um, so that was like a very deep crash course. I've had a background, so actually one of my research areas and an area that I've taught a lot in is integrating technology into physical language classes. I've taught the Corpus Linguistics for Language Teachers course, the Mobile Assisted Language Learning course. I've done a lot of research in social media and multilingualism in social media. So I've been used to thinking about how do I bring technology to a very technology heavy physical classroom. So this pandemic, like for all of us, has sort of made me flip that. Like, how do I create a human interaction heavy online classroom? And so that's something that I think is shaping my thoughts and my approaches to online language education. Just a few of my personal philosophy. I read all of your teaching philosophy points. It was so fascinating to read them all. I think one point in my online language teaching philosophy is that language teaching, I think more than content teaching, relies heavily on trust. Or maybe I can say it relies on different kinds of trust. In a content class, I think one of the things that the learners most want to see is that they trust my knowledge of the content. And mastery of content knowledge really follows a lot of what we know about knowledge. It's mostly item-based knowledge. There's less mastery of process a lot of times that's involved. But language teaching is very much the mastery of a process. Rather than learning a fact, it's much more like growing a new organ. It's a very organic process for like cultivating a garden. It takes a lot of time, and really all you can do in many ways is create the right conditions for growth to happen, make sure that those conditions, once they're created, are preserved from external threats, and then this happens. So that requires a lot more one-on-one interaction, one-on-one check-ins, a lot more genuine communication to build the baseline of trust that you need for language learning. When humans are interacting via Zoom or via online platforms in a language that they feel comfortable in, that they have a well-established identity in, That more or less works when learners are interacting in a language they have no identity in, very little sense of themselves in, a lot more hesitancy, a lot more second guessing. The amount of trust that's needed for online language education to work goes way up. So that's one of my teaching philosophy points. A second one is really that online language teaching, just like in-person language teaching, should be second language acquisition theory informed. And my understanding of second language acquisition theory, if I were to summarize it in one sentence, learning happens best when two humans are interacting with each other for a common purpose, and a common purpose that they both really care about. That they each use what they know, what they can bring to solve that common shared problem, to have that common shared discussion. When that happens, most of the other aspects of language learning, gains in fluency, gains in accuracy, gains in complexity, almost happen naturally. But the hard part is creating settings where two humans or a group of humans, three or four, are genuinely interacting about a task that they're all invested in, that they all actually in some ways care about, and can get the kind of interactive mechanisms that really best help language acquisition. So, with um, content acquisition, I sort of really know the content that I'm trying to teach. And then I can give more autonomy to the learners, more flexibility, but like, how would you want to learn this content? How would you want to demonstrate mastery in it? But my approach to language acquisition is that the content is actually something I hold with a looser hand, more like let the learners decide what they want to learn. My role as a teacher is to intervene, to help shepherd or to shape the method. How are they engaging in this content? What is the medium? What are the products? Like, what's the best thing that I can do as a teacher to make sure that some sort of discussion of real content, some sort of what we call a negotiation, is actually successful from a language acquisition perspective. So I'm holding the content with a looser hand, but I have like more of a firm grip on the methods and the medium, whereas opposed to a content class, I'm going to hold the content more with a tighter hand and hold a looser grasp on the methods and the mediums that we use to acquire, to approach that content. Um, Another point in my language philosophy for online language teaching, I'd say, is that learners are actually invested in accuracy work. A lot of times language teachers feel hesitant to work on accuracy, and especially so in an online medium. Accuracy is often read as being face threatening. Like, oh, if I give you feedback that your production was inaccurate, that there was a mistake in there somewhere, or an error, that's going to cause a learner automatically to withdraw, to retreat from language acquisition. But many learners actually deeply care about being accurate. And I think, accuracy is a type of service to my learners. I want to serve them by providing accuracy. But accuracy is a type of service that my learners are actually able to provide to the speakers, other speakers of that language community. When other speakers of that language community find it easy to understand my learners, are able to actually get and are not distracted or confused by errors that my learners are producing, it is a way that they can serve the world that they want to speak to, that they want to engage with. So I am not as much afraid of doing accuracy focused activities as I think some other language teachers are. I think it's a real benefit. And in my experience, learners actually do want accuracy. The big question is how we engage that. Maybe like a last thought about my online language teaching philosophy as I reflect on my experiences has been like a new tool is like bringing a new learner into a community. If you have a very loose set of learners that don't really know each other very well, it's not that disruptive. If a visitor comes in or if a new student joins the class, it doesn't really change the atmosphere much. If you have a very tight knit group of learners where people have begun sharing really personal things about themselves, it can be very disruptive to have an outside visitor or to have a new student join the class. And I kind of feel like that's true with tools too. Bringing a new tool is almost just like bringing a new learner into the community. If it's a loose community with low levels of trust, with high levels of confusion, bringing a new tool isn't all that much more disruptive than the kind of disruption that already exists. And there are some learners that really thrive in learning in a more chaotic environment like that. But if it's a group that's really tight knit, bringing in a new tool it raises the bar. You've got to do it very carefully. So at minimum, I would say bringing in a new tool is only worth doing when you're going to use it multiple times or you're going to spend a significant amount of time on it. It's kind of like onboarding a new learner into your class, making sure that everything is comfortable. Okay, so those were some of my points of my teaching philosophy that successful language teaching online requires different kinds of trust than a content class would. That you want to create conditions where learners are interacting in genuine negotiative communication about something that both parties or all parties are actually invested in knowing, invested in figuring out. That I don't have to be afraid of accuracy work, although accuracy work is probably best done asynchronously, whether that's accuracy in vocabulary, pronunciation, grammar. Most of that kind of work is best done in asynchronous time, whereas the interactive activities is best done in synchronous time. And then just to be careful about bringing new tools into the community, taking the time to introduce them well, making sure that everyone feels comfortable. Okay, I'm really excited to start this journey with you guys for the remaining weeks as we workshop and brainstorm the different online instructional designs that we come up with. Thank you very much for your attention.